What would a joint pay-per-view between WWE and WCW look like in 1995? We're exploring that and more. You listen to them, now hang out with us. This is After 83 Weeks with Christy Olson. That's me.
I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Boom! Hello, 83 Weeks fans, and welcome to the show that is just for you. You listen to the latest Ask Eric Anything episode of 83 Weeks, and now we are going to chat a little bit about it. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with us tonight. Joining me is the producer of Eric's digital channel and the digital channels of most of your favorite wrestling veterans. It's Steve Kaufmann.
Hello, I was doing my Teddy Long. This part of the song makes me want to just holla holla.
It's taken like 6 months or something like that, but these guys are finally dancing along at the beginning of the show. More like a year, actually.
It has been a year for this show.
This guy is a little tuckered out from training with Brian Kendrick earlier today. He is a pro wrestler, and we call him the encyclopedia of professional wrestling. Yeah, get excited, live crowd. It's George Hermoza.
Hello, I am George Hermoza, and on Wednesdays we wear pink.
I mean, that's salmon color, but to be debatable. I feel like it would be weird if I asked everyone out there what they're wearing, but I do want to remind you that we are live right here on the 83 Weeks YouTube channel. You guys can join in the conversation. I see you all there hanging out already. If you want to tell us what you think a WCW WWE pay-per-view would look like, please let us know your thoughts. And while you're at it, poking around, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the cool clips from the show right here on the 83 Weeks channel. And on that note, we're going to jump right into this one. You know what? Let's just kick it off since I've teased it so much. Tease, because I'm such a tease. Let's talk about this idea that Eric brought up that between a joint WCW and WWE pay-per-view. He was asked by one of the fans, was it ever considered? Would it ever have happened? Would it have worked? And Eric was interested in it, but he said, you know, really somewhere between 94 and 96 would have been the time to do this. What do you guys think that would have looked like in 1995?
I mean, it just depends, because obviously when you have 1995, just realistically, you would have had champion versus champions. It would have been Big Daddy Cool Diesel up against Hulk Hogan. Ooh. No thanks.
Oh.
I'm not interested. But then you had the United States Championship, which was kind of going back and forth with like Sting and whatnot. And on the other side, you had like Shawn Michaels. Yes, please. Yeah. I'd like to see a Shawn Michaels versus Sting. Obviously, we're probably never going to see it. But, man, like in 95, oh, my God, that would have been amazing.
Yeah, that's on the main event. Like, if you're telling me that Diesel versus Hulk Hogan would be the main event of such an event, of such a pay-per-view, at the time, that would have been really cool. Looking back on it, meh. Because and that's us looking back on it. Because, like, oh, we've seen that.
Right.
Kevin Nash has worked with Hulk Hogan many a time. But we're talking an alternate reality where maybe that doesn't happen. What I found fascinating was the idea that he even remotely thought he would do such a co-promotion. Or that WWF would have done a co-promotion with him. Because they didn't do co-promotions at that time.
Like looking back through rose-colored glasses now that everything's cool with him and Vince, as we also learned on this episode?
Mm-hmm.
I think part of it is him having rose-colored glasses about working there. But I also think he was like, yeah, sure, hypotheticals. He hates hypotheticals.
That is true.
So the second he hates hypotheticals, I think he allows himself the ability to go off on crazy tangents and get headlines like he's gotten this week of, oh, Eric Bischoff would have done a co-promotion. And I'm like, would he though?
It's just crazy to think about, like, if that was even in consideration of happening, like, whoever reached out first is totally like, you're going to get jobbed out. Because it sounds like when you reach out imagine if Bischoff reached out to Vince.
Yeah.
Vince is going to be like, oh, wow, he needs me to do it. Yeah, let's do it. But, you know, like, I'll agree to it. But, and just, I mean, looking back, it would have been awesome because we always saw those Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazines. They always had that maybe once a year, WWF versus WCW. It was always Bret Hart versus Sting. It was always, you know, Hogan versus Flair. Obviously, maybe like the early 90s. But, I mean, it was always fun to, like, just hypothetical, even at the time. It was always fun to think about, fun to even consider it happening.
Like, it's very fun to consider Arn Anderson versus The Undertaker.
Ooh.
I have both January 95 rosters pulled up. Macho Man Randy Savage was in WCW in 95. Macho Man Bam Bam Bigelow.
I would have liked, just for the sake of like a visual, like I would have liked The Undertaker versus, at the time, The Giant. Because The Giant was a totally different wrestler in WCW. He was more agile. He was slimmer. He can do a drop kick. And for that, like, I'd like to see him versus Big Daddy Cool Diesel or him against The Undertaker.
And we got a bunch of fans hanging out in the chat. JN of Finn and DP. DP said, your mics look like bumblebees. They do, DP. This is an AfterBuzz TV production on the 83 Weeks channel. And we do usually have Eric calling in and answering your questions. But since he was a little busy with the SmackDown premiere this week, and since you guys got to get your questions to him anyway through this episode of 83 Weeks, we don't have him this evening, but we will in the future. And people are always curious about Eric's relationship with Vince McMahon. What was it like back then? What is it like now? And we did get some juicy tidbits about what their relationship has evolved into now in 2019 with Eric working on SmackDown. He said that he works closely with Vince now, which was kind of a surprise. You know, Vince is, when you're there, he's still an elusive character. You don't see him around much, and I always wonder, like, it always sounds to everyone like he pretty much only talks to one or two people, you know, that kind of relay all the messages. But according to Eric, he and Vince are working closely together now. And he even went so far as to call Vince a genius. What do you make of that, boys?
And watching the WWE Network, they have a lot of those, like, chronicle shows or behind the scenes shows, a lot of those kind of like in depth where you don't really see that on Raw or SmackDown. And every now and then you'll see a glimpse of like Vince not being Mr. McMahon. You'll see him Vince being Vince, and Vince actually being in a position where, all right, at this point you turn to your right because the camera's going to be right there. Like, you see glimpses of that, and I love that because like I just want to get more of just how genius that everybody says he is. Like, you see that happening like right in front of you. Like, I believe it. I believe Eric when he says that, because there's a lot of things that we don't see as a fan that I'm sure they all see up close.
I think if we given Eric's history, both with WCW, but then also producing TV outside of WCW, like, I think part of the reason he's in on this Fox deal is he has an extensive history and contacts just selling television and developing television and producing television. So for Eric Bischoff to say, I'm working on television week to week with Vince McMahon, and I think he's a genius. And like, even he's cautious about what I mean by genius and this and that. Like, I think there's some merit to it. I also think there's some merit to Vince McMahon being at the helm of a brand that has weathered so much. Mm-hmm. Like, weathered more than any other wrestling brand could have ever possibly imagined to weather. That there must be something there. There must be something there that is otherworldly, and that's normally when we start getting into genius or guru or magic.
Yeah.
And like, that's where those words become, where it's like, it clicks for him and he gets it. Like, there's a theory of genius relativity. People who don't mess with YouTube at all call me a genius. Because they don't mess with YouTube at all, but it means a lot more coming from Eric.
All right, well, I was just going to say, until Eric calls you a genius, Steve, we don't want to hear about it on this show. No, I digress. Steve is a YouTube genius and makes all of this happen for us. Love that you guys are still chatting there in the live chat. So tell us, live chatters, what you think about this. Does Ted Turner belong in the WWE Hall of Fame? He, of course, probably would be reluctant to do an appearance now because of his health issues. But do you guys think that would be appropriate? Like, if you heard that news, you know, come March or whatever it is, when it all started spilling out, Ted Turner inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, what would be your reaction?
I think he's always been a worthy of a Hall of Fame induction. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they would ever give him like the platform to speak.
Right.
But now that they have that legacy wing of where you can just induct like 8 people at a time, mm-hmm. Most of them, I think that they've all passed away though. Have they ever inducted a legacy person that's still alive?
I think they've inducted enough legacy people in the last like 3 years that I'm sure they've done that at least once, where somebody was just alive.
No, but
I don't know who it is.
I want to say everybody has passed away. So I think it's something where maybe they're gonna wait till he passes away, just for the sake of like, because if they do it now, they're gonna be like, well, why don't they just have him give him a speech?
Right. Oh, well, if he's alive, like if he's with us, we're expecting him to speak. But if he doesn't speak, that's the conundrum that we're in. Mm-hmm. I completely think he's worth, especially if there are other network executives. I want to say the NBC is it Dick Ebersol or Bob Ebersol? The NBC executive that brought Saturday Night's Main Event. Either he was floated multiple years to be in the Hall of Fame, or he is in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. So it's not like TV executives don't belong or aren't already in the WWE Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. So by that stretch, Ted Turner, absolutely.
I wonder what that would mean to Ted. Obviously, he was a huge proponent of professional wrestling because he made WCW happen on his network. But would a WWE Hall of Fame induction now be meaningful to him? Would it be a reminder that he didn't make WCW work? I mean, he's had so many accomplishments and he probably has so dang much money. And does he really care?
I disagree with a tiny bit of what you said. I think he did make WCW work. If anything, WCW stopped working when he lost control of it. Because that was something that, once the AOL Time Warner thing came out, we heard Eric say it a bunch of times. When Ted Turner lost control, he didn't really have a say.
That's true.
Because he was a strong proponent since back in the early '80s of having wrestling on his networks, and to the point where I maybe you would know, I don't know how involved he is today with any of his networks, but we have wrestling on TNT once again, and it all kind of stemmed with having that history that Ted Turner brought into the Turner networks.
Yeah.
He's not wildly involved in any of the networks that, shockingly enough, bear his name. But if I were writing his Hall of Fame speech, which if all this goes down, I'm available.
He's just saying.
I think I would have him point out that this is amazing and an incredible honor, however very bittersweet.
Right.
That I was trying to build up a wrestling industry. That Ted Turner was trying to build up a wrestling industry, a healthy wrestling industry, and here I am with the highest honor you can receive in the wrestling industry, which is the Hall of Fame from one company.
Right.
The company I tried to go head to head with.
Well,
that needs a polish.
Born Distracted in the chat said, I wonder if Ted will buy AEW. That's one way to give himself another shot at it, I guess. Although I don't think the Khan family is interested in getting rid of it anytime soon. Seems like a valuable commodity. And while while the chat roll is talking about it anyway, they're probably at home watching it right now. Let's talk about the fact that Eric Bischoff himself, the guy who is responsible for getting SmackDown onto Fox, or now for making it happen, not for making it happen in the first place, but he is sitting at home on his probably very valuable little bit of free time watching last week's AEW premiere, not once, but twice. What do you guys make of that? That's huge.
I think that's interesting when he said twice. I was like,
So
wow,
he said twice. Here, now, if I were Eric, I would make it an internal directive for any creative person, any production person, anyone integral to my operation. Have a look at what AEW is doing.
Most of the people that work there aren't even watching Raw and SmackDown. Good luck with that.
But at the very least, I would say that as the idea of, and not watch them.
But would you tell the world that you did that and you want the rest of your staff to do it?
I mean, yeah. I don't think he's saying he's going to watch every week. I think he's saying he watched the one premiere to kind of see what they're about, what they're presenting, how they're presenting it. That I don't think that's weird that he said he watched it. He watched it twice. He's having a look. Maybe there's productions. There's always, and if he's as the producer of SmackDown, there's only one other show like SmackDown, and that's Raw, until AEW came along, and that's the only show not produced by the WWE. So he'd be a fool to not, at the very least, check it out production wise. What do the graphics look like?
Yeah, of course.
Are they doing the same camera stuff we do?
Eric Bischoff, we know that's what he does. He does his research. But to tell everybody that he watched it twice,
I think that's smart.
I'm just surprised.
But
that
at the
he would
same
admit
time,
it.
though, he didn't really say oh my god, I enjoyed this. Cody versus this was my favorite match. That he didn't. You know what I mean? I think there was some stuff that he was I'm not gonna say if I liked it or disliked it. But I think a lot of us, we were just all curious and there's this new promotion that has $1 billion behind it. It's on a major network. Let me see what it's like.
But he did kind of take the easiest, safest way out of it after that by putting the crowd over anything else that had anything to do with the show or the production value or anything like that.
Because honestly,
there it is. There he is. There's Eric Bischoff.
I don't think he's watching AEW to say oh my god, what should I do now? No, dude, you're on Fox on SmackDown. You don't need to do anything. You need to focus on your own stuff, which he did because that SmackDown set was freaking beautiful, and you can tell there was nothing AEW about that SmackDown set.
Right, of course not.
But what I'm saying, just from a pure production standpoint, let's say AEW had a shot that was made because they put a drone on one turnbuckle and then it panned all the way out.
That'd be so freaking cool.
I would need to, if I were producing a wrestling show in America, and I would need to see a company do that.
Right.
How did they do that? What did it look like? Do you think it was cheaper or more expensive than what I'm doing? I think a lot of the things he was looking for on that show were very innocuous.
Yeah.
We're very much just two cranes. They do two
Wouldn't
cranes.
be things that the fans necessarily care about.
Not at all. But obviously he's a wrestling fan. He would be watching the wrestling too. But I think there's a lot to see, and I think maybe that's why he watched it twice. I think once was just a matter of what are the color scales? Who are the characters? Where do they keep commentary? How did that feel? Like, and then the next time it's like, well, what's the overall product?
Well, I just found that very, very interesting. And I'm wondering if you guys have watched the WWE Girls Gone Wild DVD.
Never.
What is that? I that was a shock to me. Didn't know that was a thing. Encyclopedia of Professional Wrestling. I somehow feel that you have some details on this. Can you please tell the people about the WWE Girls Gone Wild DVD?
It wasn't produced by the WWE. It was just produced by a guy that was a general manager that in WWE, because Eric Bischoff still had his thing going on back in 2003. Or he can still produce some stuff.
His production
It was
company?
heavily promoted by the WWE. It was mentioned by multiple superstars in the WWE. They always said like, "Oh, GGW, what's GGW?" But it was just it's still considered a non-WWE project, which was influenced by the WWE. It wasn't a WWE
Again,
product.
a safe, weird way to get out of something. What year-ish are we talking?
2003.
I'm reading up on it now. It's 2003.
You know an incredible lot about this for someone who supposedly has never seen it. George.
I didn't see it because it was on pay-per-view. I'm not going to sit there and watch. It
was a pay-per-view.
Yeah, it was a pay-per-view.
Okay, that does make sense now.
That he sold a pay-per-view. Looks like Dawn Marie flashed a crowd at a SmackDown to promote this. Wow. So like WWE was very heavily involved in the cross promotion.
Right.
But it was very much an Eric Bischoff joint. Which, because once again, if it were a huge success, because who knows what is and isn't mainstream success in the time of pushing an envelope in 2003, like, I don't know, maybe people will just get over boobs. Maybe like who like.
Well, you can think about that. Those boobs now are probably like in their 40s. And they will be thinking about it.
Well, they are now.
They are now. Maybe, I just got into your head a little bit there, or maybe someone's been getting in your ear, like how all the guys were getting in Goldberg's ear, according to Eric. This was really interesting, a really good question from one of the fans. And Eric kind of said, I think some of the guys' motives was really to just mess with Goldberg, to entertain themselves, guys like Scott Hall. And then I think there were some that were really trying to help him. You disagree, George?
No, it just because he was so new. People are usually that are new in the business, and you kind of, and especially with the way WCW ran, it's like it's very easily to influence somebody. Where like even I met this guy that was about to train with, or two guys that were about to train in pro wrestling, and like they're asking me, a guy that still thinks I'm very inexperienced, but they look at me as if like, oh my God, do you have any advice for me? And I'm like, yeah, just be patient. I tell them like, just be patient, you'll get it, But it's like, I could have told them anything I wanted. So just kind of knowing.
I mean, you've had like 3 shows.
Yeah, but it's like, no.
I'm just kidding. George is fantastic. He has grown very much, and we'd love to go watch him.
Knowing that they have the power to say whatever it is that they want. Some use it for good, some use it for bad.
That's a good
I
example.
think with the way things were ran in WCW, there were so many agendas that. Some of them just kind of used it to benefit themselves. How can I get myself over by giving this guy some advice?
I like the analogy that Goldberg was put in a pilot seat and has nenever been trained as a pilot. And then the co-pilot is giving him a bunch of random stuff that he doesn't know. That the advice of the co-pilot is, I don't know, man, maybe you should try this.
Yeah.
That I think that's what we're up to. That's what we're up to with the Goldberg stuff. Also, I think there's a certain resentment to Goldberg for coming in the way he did and for getting over and moving through the roster as soon as he did. That if I were him, I wouldn't have trusted anyone.
Right.
But like Goldberg admittedly didn't grow up watching wrestling. Like I at least if I were Goldberg, I would have had the ability to have seen wrestling my whole life to know what I think it is and isn't and what my character should have been. But he didn't have that. So he just had to listen to everybody else until they steered him wrong. And then he didn't know who to listen to. And it's probably a bad way to be. I have some empathy for Goldberg here.
Yeah, and we are glad that all you diehard 83 Weeks fans out there are listening to us, because this is the show that is just for you, and we appreciate that you all have come together to talk about it. We want your opinions. That's what this is for. So maybe that, instead of, calling people's names, just saying. And while we're, calling people names, Eric was finally sort of taken to task about Terry Taylor on this episode. I've been ready for this just because he has continued to describe Terry in a not exactly flattering way, shall we say, over the last several weeks as he's working at the same place as Terry. And I kept thinking, like, aren't these guys going to run into each other? Like, is Eric going to have to answer to Terry for what he's been saying? Like, does Terry care? Does he know? Well, we may never know, because according to Eric, he barely knew that Terry even still worked there. And Eric, surprisingly, has not even been to the PC yet, which for somebody who does a lot of research, I know obviously NXT isn't any part of what he has to do with, but I'm just surprised. I'm sure he's planning on making it there sometime soon.
I will point out, you would know better than I, but it was in a press release when they built the PC that everything that happens at every ring gets broadcast to Stanford.
Yes, true.
So he's seen the PC. Like,
good point.
Eric has seen the PC. Maybe that's why he doesn't feel, or the people who make a schedule don't feel he's had to go yet. And I think the Fox debut has probably been priority number one since he got there.
Right.
That, like, come down to the PC and look at who's on the up is probably not a priority for him. Nor do we know the details exactly of his job to know that if he would ever come down to the PC and scout talent, if you will. But
well, if he runs into Terry Taylor down there, he'll be a little better off now than he would have been before, because he did have some nice things to say. He said Terry had some of the best ideas I've ever heard in regards to like psychology and things like that, but also sometimes acted less than professionally and had a big mouth. Terry Taylor is the first guy to tell you that like he's reformed and he wasn't like an A+ quality person back in the day. I don't think he would deny that by any means, but yes, as far as psychology and stuff goes, as someone who sat at NXT show after NXT show after NXT show with the coaches in her ear with the IFB on, I don't know that anyone is as good at making the crowd do what they should do from behind the scenes. I mean, it just really is incredible. So it was great to hear Eric kind of putting Terry over for once.
I've heard some things about Terry Taylor as well, where it's just like, that's, you know, you say something, oh, is this true about Taylor? Typical Terry. Yeah, that's just Terry Taylor. Like, I mean, he's great, but... You know, oh, he's got these things, but like, you know, just Terry. Nothing like malicious or nothing like, you know, too bad. And like, you know, we've heard stories about people, other trainers in NXT, nothing like that. But you just hear like, oh, that's Terry. Oh, that's just Terry being Terry. Like, you would know. I mean, like I said,
yeah. Oh yeah, I know exactly.
you weren't my source, but yeah, I just heard a lot about Terry Taylor.
I wasn't your source. Well, one thing that gets a lot of people all wound up every single time is Glacier. Okay, we can't get through and ask Eric anything episode without people wanting to know what the hell was up with Glacier. And he's said it a million times. They were trying to push video games. Why is everyone like still so mad about Glacier?
Because the amount of promotion that they put into that character,
yeah,
it was like months of video vignettes, months of introduction segments where it's like, wow, this guy's going to be like a huge, who's this Glacier? Oh my God, what is it? Blood runs cold. And he comes out and it looks like exactly like Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat. I liked it. I'm not saying I disliked it, but that's essentially what it was. All the hype, all the buildup for a Sub-Zero wannabe.
I thought you were going to say Schwarzenegger from the Batman movies.
No, I don't know.
They copped Glacier.
Oh, okay, that
for
was
Schwarzenegger from the Batman.
Chicken before the egg.
But the question was, did he ever see Glacier as a world champion? And I think he answered it pretty honestly. Of like, I was trying to sell toys, man.
Yeah.
I was trying to make a video game character. Maybe Capcom would pay me to put him in Marvel vs. Capcom. Like I didn't have long sights on the Glacier character. I was very much like, I could sell some toys with this guy.
But I'm happy he said that, because like that's a big part of pro wrestling that I think just doesn't go noticed, where not everybody's going to be a world champion. We've had 51 world champions or 51 world champions in WWE. How many wrestlers have gone by through that company in the last 50 years? Like thousands. Like not everybody's going to be a world champion. Sometimes you just use a guy just because you know that they're going to be a good merch seller. It's that simple.
But I also think when you build an idea, when you're building a brand new character, whether it's Glacier or Hulk Hogan, you should in your mind see them being world champion someday. Absolutely. I think is what the questioner was asking.
I disagree.
You disagree? So you think Kofi Kingston, never in a million years, don't even bother. This is who Kofi Kingston is. He'll never be world champion.
No, but I can say that about Xavier Woods.
Really?
Yeah.
I see Xavier Woods. I could... Actually, this is timestamped now. I think Xavier Woods is young enough and speaks to his audience directly enough that he could be a world champion in the next 15 years.
Well,
everybody.
15 years, he'll be a YouTuber.
Yeah, technically,
like
everybody
else.
could be.
No, but that's what I'm
But
saying.
like he's not. Like sometimes you just gotta have some of these guys that just kind of fill out the roster for merch purposes, for video game purposes, for toys. Like no, like you just can't. Like it's impossible.
But you're saying the roles that they slot. I'm saying when you're developing the character, that's different. When you're developing the character from page one, if you can't see them as world champion, you should tear up that page and start over.
No, because I mean, we saw Eric exactly do that with Glacier. So what? He was wrong. Like no, let the guy be. He was exactly what Eric's
I mean, did you love
was.
Glacier?
I liked him.
No, but what I'm saying is, let's say that character, after all the promotion, actually got over, and then he wound up in a video game.
Then he needs to become world champion. So he needed to, from the beginning, be able to be seen
that's
as
what
a
I'm
champion.
saying. On page one, that wasn't... on page one, if you're looking at him, you're looking at the character, you're looking at, okay, he's Glacier, he's blue, he's kind of like Sub-Zero.
Yeah.
We got this big bad dude who knows how to work. To play him, this is the character that we're building. I see him as world champion in 5 years, 3 years.
My point is, even if Eric didn't think that doesn't mean he was wrong.
No, I disagree. If he was on page one of Glacier and did not see the crazy fever dream, because that's what it all looks like later down the line.
If you're a promoter, you start your own wrestling company, you hire 40 guys. You're going to say at some point you want every guy to be a world champion?
No, I'm saying
but they have to be able to be seen as one. Like there has to be that possibility. Yeah, that's
you
what I'm
think
saying.
Marco Stunt can be a world champion? Oh God, I hope not.
I don't either, but I do. I think if I were writing the character of Marco Stunt,
you're gonna book him like as if he has a chance to be a world champion.
We're not. But you're talking booking. That's the role. I'm talking the character. On page one, the character needs to be believable as a world champion.
Yeah.
That's all I mean. You slot them in whatever role you need. Like Xavier Woods is not in a world champion, future world champion role. Xavier Woods from page one as a wrestler, as a performer, as an athlete. It would make sense to me if given the proper storytelling that Xavier Woods becomes world champion.
You have the perfect chance to say Xavier, or to ask him personally, is it Xavier or Xavier? You guys were at the same show.
I know. I don't bother people at shows.
All right. Speaking of other shows, let's talk about what other wrestling podcasts tell fake stories. Because Eric made this kind of like cute little offhanded comment about, well, you can listen to fake stories on one of the other shows. You guys, I know, consume a ton of wrestling podcasts. Steve, you're involved in most of them. Which ones tell fake stories?
Russo.
Of course.
Well, and by fake, I mean Russo is, by some accounts, is misremembering. Literally from the way he retold it from his book to how he told you the story yesterday. Like the story the story changes and he's like, bro, this is how it happened, bro. So like I think I'm safe in saying Russo tells false stories that you could claim are fake. He remembers them that way. False memories are a thing. Who do you know?
I
George?
was gonna say, just going off like the Meltzer podcast, because I know he's got a podcast every day or every other day.
Yeah, like the Wrestling Observer Live.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that must be about 96% garbage.
Well, sometimes he says something about Peyton Royce, and we all get to hear it because that's what that was from. That's not a fake story. That was just a criticism. I don't know. Like Dave Meltzer is a bit more. I was about to say advanced. That's not it. But like the way Dave Meltzer reports, you can't just call him out like, oh, that's completely fake so much. It's like you're not naming your source.
Well, it's not that. It's just like, for example, you look at Cedric Alexander, like, and there's the audio of it. He's like, oh, Cedric, Vince must hate him. Vince hates him. Like, it turns into like, my opinion is Vince doesn't like Cedric Alexander. That's why he gets booked the way he does. That's why he loses.
Because I think I know a man who I've probably never met.
But no, that's what he thinks. Out comes, oh, well, Vince is clearly burying Cedric Alexander.
Yeah.
Like, that's what actually comes out of his mouth, as opposed to what he actually thinks.
I don't know if this is too much of a left turn, but George, you and I were just praising Sean Ross Sapp today for not doing that. Sean Ross Sapp,
wrestling journalist.
Yes, thank you. Sean Ross Sapp will always report it as the source told me. I'm inferring. You're allowed to editorialize. You just have to make your editorializations clear.
Yeah, it's not hard. Take a journalism class. If me and all the people I went to college with can do it, trust me, you can too. Greg Gagne. This is a guy who I knew, George, that you could shed a little more light on. Apparently, he likes to run his mouth a little bit, and he has some ideas about what happened in the past.
I saw Greg Gagne like 4 days ago.
Where at?
Right
SmackDown?
after SmackDown. After SmackDown.
So was he there?
I didn't see him at SmackDown. Do you know who he was? when you saw him?
Not by face. We saw Greg.
He was right behind. He was mostly talking to Ric Flair.
Okay.
But it was funny. I was
no, yeah, I talked to Greg.
I remember I was like, oh my God, like Bischoff's right over there. Like, are they going to interact? Are they going to whatever, you know? So I just thought it was funny, like, because I was like, why is Greg Gagne here? Like, that's what went on through my mind. Like, he doesn't work for the company. At least I don't think he does. Why is he here in Los Angeles? But I guess he just wanted to be a part of the show or whatever. But I've heard things about like him wanting to be inclusive of everything, and he had a job with WWE not too long ago, but I heard they released him because he was just too like not with the current stuff. Like, dude, it's to the time of the 2007.
Are you going to tell us if he and Eric interacted or not?
They did not.
They didn't.
Okay.
I
At
was
least
also-
not
at
that,
least
not
in
that
front
you
of us.
saw.
Not that I saw.
Not
Yeah.
that you saw.
I was also at that bar. If there was a blow up, I would have remembered.
Right. Well, Eric didn't really make it sound like it would be blow up status, but just more so that it doesn't matter what this guy says because everyone knows that what he's saying is junk.
A little bit.
Is that kind of his reputation?
It's one of those things that if you say as much, I don't want to say wrong, but like if you claim so much, people won't believe you even if you're telling the truth.
Right.
Like one of those things might have been factual, but to say, oh man, it was my idea to bring in Hulk Hogan, it was my idea to do the NWO, it was my idea for the Nitro Girls, it was my idea to run on Monday nights. Two of those are false, I think. But like, if you keep saying that instead of, oh, I also had that idea, people won't take you seriously.
Yeah.
Even if it was true, because you would imagine one of those things he was heavily involved in, and it was probably his idea. Also, in creative, we hear from Eric a lot. It's not about nobody stole your idea.
Right.
We all worked on an idea.
Collaborative efforts. And since you guys brought up SmackDown, let's bring this full circle and get back to Eric's relationship with Vince, maybe how he used to call and leave him braggy voicemails, which I found just to be hilarious.
I am so disappointed in Conrad Thompson.
For what?
How is not the follow-up question, how did you get Vince's phone number? That's what I wanted to know.
Oh, I didn't think about that, but I mean, obviously that would be an easy get for him. For Eric.
Maybe, but I just want to know how to get it. Like, not like they worked together in the past. Like, how did you get it?
But like, do you think the executive producer of The Masked Singer on Fox wouldn't be able to get Mark Burnett's phone number? The executive producer of Survivor.
But tell me how. But my guess is just back in the day, which was what 96,
Somebody
97.
who left the company gave it to him.
Just maybe he just calling the headquarters. But like, I wanted something more elaborate than just like, oh yeah, I used to call his voicemail all the time. Like, no.
You want the nitty gritty, dirty details
like,
on these sassy voicemails.
Did you call the office and you just, like, can I get buzz into Vince's office? It's Eric Bischoff. Oh my God, it's Eric Bischoff. Oh my God. And I'll go, send him to voicemail. Like,
but have Vince and you spoken before? You're right. There is a bit. I don't know if it's quite a follow up, but like I've called that headquarters before. You can probably make your way further in that phone tree than you think.
Oh my God, it'd be so fun to try.
Especially back then in 96,
wow.
97.
I can't tell you how much pranking WWE would just entertain the living daylights out of me. We should do that sometime.
Well, you yourself mentioned at the Performance Center that, was it once a week or once a day people would just turn up?
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
people would literally turn up to the door thinking like, can I come in?
Yeah, well, I mean,
here?
that's kind of a widely accepted thing. People think that you can just go, that you can pay to go there, that you can just walk in, or that like if you'll dedicate yourself, they'll just take you. Like that's not an uncommon misconception. But yeah, that is true.
Or at least back then in 96, 97, I'm sure because the ladder wasn't as high as it was.
Yeah.
Like maybe it was easier to get to Vince's office. Where like you call now, it's like they just move into a new building because they need a bigger space. Like. They got to go through a bunch of like steps to get to it.
Right. Well, we do know that when Vince brought Eric back in the day, that was what, 2002?
July 15, 2002.
Yeah, so let's talk about this, a little bit different phone call than Eric's braggy voicemails when Vince calls him and asks him to be the GM for Raw. So this is a long time ago, of course, but I think says a lot about their evolving relationship. Vince called him and said, hey, dude, he probably didn't say, hey, dude.
Hey, dude.
But if I would have been the one to lose, I would hope that you would have given me an opportunity to get back into business, and that's what I'm going to do for you. Are we surprised that Eric didn't find that arrogant, that he found that kind?
I think that was kind, though. Like, I think that was a pure enough gesture that it was just kind. Mm-hmm. And like, for all that can be said about Vince and for all that has been said about Vince, hearing that on the phone from him, and maybe in his mind, he absolutely knows he needs Eric Bischoff on Raw in 2002. Mm-hmm. But Eric doesn't know that. Eric is hearing something very genuine. That it's not a shock to me at all that he was just like, oh, that's very kind.
Interesting.
And Eric conveniently does not live in the past to be able to tell us whether or not he would have been able to extend the same courtesy to Vince.
Yeah, he couldn't even take himself to that place.
It's really difficult to get to that place. Well, because Vince has been on top, having beaten WCW for longer than WCW was in business.
Right.
At this point now,
Yeah.
that it's impossible to truly conceptualize what WWF losing would have even looked like.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know that Eric loved all the embarrassing crap that Vince made him do back in the day. And the one thing I think that people say about Vince more than anything is that he won't ask someone to do something that he wouldn't do himself. Like Eric even said, look what this man has put his family through on television, you know, and they're all game for it. Like, that's how it works, of course. But that's what everybody always says about him, and you have to respect that.
Yeah, I thought about the embarrassing stuff, and everybody was always saying like, "Oh, I don't want to be booked that way. I don't want to, you know." But honestly, like that looks like fun, like because you know you're gonna get a reaction from that. Like sometimes, you know, we all seen like maybe certain matches go out there and people start chanting boring, or people just aren't paying attention. Like that, I'm sure is gonna kill somebody's self-esteem or somebody's ego. But to go out there, do some of the embarrassing stuff and hear them react to that, it's like, I'm sure that's a blast. I'm sure Eric loved it.
And let me tell you, when you're not a wrestler, but you are out there with the live crowd and you see what that feels like, you want to be a part of it so bad. Like, I can't tell you how much I just always wanted somebody to like try to hit me with a chair, which did finally happen one time on the indies, not in WWE, but like to be part of the action like that old school way that like Lillian got involved back in the day, or someone like that, like Michael Cole became a wrestler for a while. That looks like freaking fun to people who can't get in the ring and do the wrestling, George.
Or even the moment when, because there's the moment in every referee's career when a wrestler, like a big bad wrestler, gets in their face, and they push back.
Yeah.
It's happened kind of recent. There was too much wrestling last week for me to dissect it, but that had happened last week, where someone got in a referee's face and the referee like literally pushed them back. Like, I'm a referee, you're gonna adhere to what I say and do.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
like similar stuff.
He's out there in the ring with the wrestlers night after night and doesn't get to get involved in the action. It's not about getting the accolades either. It's just like a little bit of FOMO, I think, when you literally have to sit in a chair at ringside and ring the bell while everybody else is in there having all the fun. Like, it's a little sad.
Christy, do we need
Keep
to
cutting that promo?
Christy, do we need to call the hobo?
Is that your pipe bomb?
Are we gonna get back in the ring?
Should we all get back in the ring? One of us is actually doing it.
Probably a no. Probably a no. But this has been fun as always, guys. Is there anything you want to add about this episode of 83 Weeks?
I mean, I was expecting maybe a little bit juicier stuff. I know some of the stuff, like for example, they asked like, "Oh, what did you think of that one person in WCW?" And Eric would be like, "Oh, that's more of a Shivani thing, like." Bill, Klondike Bill, or some other girl. I'm like, I don't know. I was a little disappointed at some of the questions that the fans asked this week. So maybe hopefully for the next Ask Eric Anything, maybe it's a lot more juicier stuff, because there was some good content here, but I feel like with the previous ones, there was even more content.
Well, for the purposes of not insulting the people who probably watch this show, as in the fans of 83 Weeks, I would like to point out that, it was at Conrad's disposal kind of which ones he wanted to dispose of and which ones he wanted to use.
I'll give him that.
Jada Finn in the chat, I wanted to know the actual figure Eric would pay for the toy Ninja Stars.
Ooh, that's a good
one. Or the Ninja
one.
Star Wars, as he's calling them. Jada Finn, you need to let us know in the chat right now. We have about 2 minutes. Do you have access to Ninja Star Wars figures that you need to know how much he'd ask?
Didn't you say you had one at one point or something?
No.
All the wrestling memorabilia and stuff that you guys have probably bought over the years, and neither one of you has that in the back of your closet?
No, I have Silverhawks of action figures. Right?
Wow.
Silverhawks? Thunderhawks?
Probably Thunderhawks.
Thunderhawks? Or what was the other one?
Thundercats?
Thundercat. There was Thundercats and Silverhawks. Those are the action figures that I had. and wrestling, of course.
All right. Well, next lifetime, you know what to buy.
I don't even know what
Gentlemen,
Ninja Star Wars are.
since the chat roll is getting sassy just now while we're about to roll out, tell everybody where to keep up with you at.
You guys can find me on Twitter almost exclusively. I am at Steve Kaufmann. That is Kaufmann. I'm involved in a lot of things. If I tweet the link, chances are I'm involved, including Match Monday every Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific. Me and a guest will watch some pro wrestling, and you'll get to watch with us.
Yay, I was on this week. It was really fun.
You were on this week. It was so fun.
Oh, okay. I thought you was we were watching Caitlyn.
I'm talking anything.
Yeah, we were watching Caitlyn, Nikki Bella from NXT, etc., etc. But you can follow me at G Hermoza, GHERMOZA. I'm here a couple times a week on Monday nights covering the Raw and Espanol for all the Latin audience out there, even the non-Latin. Feel free to watch. I'm here every week, so thank you so much for watching. Wrestling Pro Wrestling. We'll let you know when the next show is. October 26th in Burbank, California.
And next week, right here on this show, we will be talking Halloween Havoc 1996. That's going to be good. Everybody getting their costumes together. Maybe we should dress up. No? All right. Not happening. But either way, you guys should tune in. We are live every Wednesday night at 5 p.m. Pacific time right here on the 83 Weeks channel. You can always hit me up at Christy Reports. I hope you do. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.